Hello, Ghoulish fam. We've missed you so. Sorry we've been so absent. We were sick once again, which made that our 5th illness this past winter season. Thank goodness that's all over with. We've also been dealing with some real life shit these past few months. We don't want to get into the deets too much, but we're all healthy and okay, aside from one of our close loved ones. Shout out Grandma Effie. We love you, and you're going to kick cancer's ass. We just know it. But on to the topic for tonight's conversation. Today we're going to be talking about the horrible murder of Aundria Bowman and just how much a birth mother's love runs deep and what she'll be willing to do to seek justice for her little girl. Strap in for one of the most wicked rides of your life and pay close attention because this case is absolutely loaded. We're glad you're here with us. I'm Maggie.
I'm Ariel.
And I'm Drew.
And you're listening to Cheese for Thought podcast. On Saturday, March 11th, 1989, in Holland, Michigan, it was a day just like any other. We are good. Mothers fed their babies breakfast before plopping them in front of their favorite scheduled programs, just like they had on any other Saturday morning. But on this day, all was everything but ordinary within the home that sat on the corner of Lincoln Road and 52nd Street. This particular house belonged to Dennis and Brenda Bowman, a married couple with 2 children. For the Bowmans, March 11th would be the last time they'd see their 14-year-old daughter, Aundria, alive. Dennis, Aundria's adoptive father, contacted officials the night of March 11th to tell them that he'd come home from dropping off his wife at her second shift job at Lincolnshire to find Aundria missing, along with some of her belongings and $100 from his dresser. Dennis described Aundria as a troubled teenager who frequently fought with his wife, Brenda. He also mentioned that Aundria had run away to a friend's house once before. After the initial phone call with police, Dennis agreed to call around to the homes of kids Aundria knew to help find out if anyone had seen her, as he was advised to do so by authorities. But not long after this call was placed, Brenda took over as the family's point of contact. It was Brenda who called the police on a regular basis and who corrected the amount of cash missing from her husband's dresser to $150. That was enough for police to issue a warrant for Aundria's arrest for larceny. The warrant listed Dennis as the victim of his daughter's alleged crime.
Bam. It's a felony right away. She's gone. Let's not worry about her being
14.
Yeah, her being gone. Let's more worry about it's a felony and that she took money.
It was $100 too.
Right.
150.
Oh, 150. Sorry.
150.
Right. It was 100 and then it got corrected to 150. It's like, what big whoop.
Yeah.
I think they lied about that $50.
With no foul play suspected, the police labeled Aundria a runaway and passed her case along to the Youth Services Bureau.
As they usually do, from what we learned. They never take it seriously at first.
They never do.
Anything to brush it under the carpet so they don't have to deal with it.
Exactly. Anything to get out of work.
Everyone's a runaway.
Yep. Bye. No, I'm just kidding. The few people who knew the Bowmans questioned the official narrative. Over the years, there had been whispers about the family. Once, when Aundria was in middle school, she boarded the school bus bleeding from her wrist. Some kids gossiped about a suicide attempt, but others said Aundria had cut herself trying to get back into her house after her adoptive parents locked her out. There were rumors that Dennis, a former Navy reservist, with reddish-brown hair and a goatee and wire-rimmed glasses, and Brenda, a portly woman with curled bangs who'd once worked at the jewelry counter in a Meyer department store, abused Aundria. But back then, what happened behind closed doors was considered family business. 15 months before Aundria disappeared, Brenda gave birth to a daughter named Vanessa. Aundria went from being an only child to more than a big sister. She was a third parent. While other kids her age went to clubs after school and Friday night football games, Aundria stayed home changing diapers and cleaning bottles. Aundria even kept a photo of her sister in a school folder where other teens might stash a magazine cutout or a Polaroid of their crush. When she wasn't with Vanessa, Aundria was anxious about the baby's well-being. Many people in Holland assumed that Aundria had gotten so fed up with her home life that she finally split. Their thought was that she'd maybe gone looking for her birth mother. Some people heard that Aundria hitched a ride at a local truck stop and had left town with an older boy. Others also heard she was maybe pregnant. Brenda reported a series of tips in the weeks and months following her daughter's disappearance, all of which seemed to confirm that Aundria was a runaway.
Well, could you imagine, like, hey, I got adopted and the family's going to love me. And it's just like, no, we don't love you. We're going to use you to take care of our
babysitter.
Yeah, the living babysitter.
Yeah. At the end of March, Brenda claimed Aundria had been spotted at a 7-Eleven. In mid-April, Brenda said she received an anonymous call from someone claiming that police were looking for the teenager in the right area, but on the wrong street, whatever that meant. In June, she reported a sighting at a local property where Aundria had supposedly been hanging out with a group of young men. And in October, Brenda said a friend had seen Aundria pregnant and with dyed hair waiting in a line at a Meijer. Other reports stated she was spotted at a local roller skating rink, or that she started working in the adult entertainment industry down in Indiana. Police investigated but found nothing.
Those are very drastic, different stories.
Yeah, I know.
You know, like
adult... for it to all turn up nothing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Her classmates remember hearing that she'd ran away to a truck stop to have a trucker pick her up, and she took off from there to live her life somewhere else.
There's so many like variations
Yeah,
here. It's like,
that's-
Well,
what in
this
the
is
world?
what all her classmates and everybody just, they believe that was true.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is
Oh.
what they actually thought
But
was
still,
true.
like,
Okay.
it's
There's just a lot going on.
Yeah, a lot of different random stories.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Oh, it says roller skating rink.
And plus, when
Nah.
people are born
Yeah.
in small towns, they make up,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
whatever.
Yo, I saw a
And
roller.
it is a small town.
I saw
Yeah.
a roller skating. Oh, I saw it in an adult film. Like that's.
Sorry, 7-Eleven.
I saw it at 7-Eleven.
Andrea's classmates all went to prom and graduated, then later entered the workforce or headed off to college. Eventually, her classmates were married and off having children of their own, but Aundria remained forever 14. A single photograph formed in most people's memory of her. It was the photograph that had been given to the police when she first vanished. In it, Aundria sitting against a blue studio backdrop, looking just off camera with her green eyes cast hopefully upward and pieces of her dark shaggy hair hanging over her forehead. Her smile is charmingly off balance. She looks suspended between adolescence and adulthood. Photos of missing children were often printed on the sides of milk cartons or on flyers taped to the top of pizza delivery boxes. Aundria's picture wound up somewhere else. In 1993, the band Soul Asylum debuted a music video for its song Runaway Train, featuring the images and names of missing kids across America. The video was a huge hit, with several versions airing on MTV and VH1. In the one that played in Michigan, Aundria's photo appeared just after the 2-minute mark. Reflecting on the video 20 years after its release, director Tony Kaye claimed that more than 24 children were found because of this video.
That's kind of cool.
I thought so
Yeah,
too.
that is pretty cool.
Aundria Bowman wasn't one of them.
Unfortunately.
Now, that brings us to Carl Koppelman, who was a huge help in solving this case. All right, so Carl Koppelman was never someone who was expected to solve mysteries in his lifetime. He worked as an accountant until 2009, when his mother's health began to decline. At 46, Koppelman became a full-time caregiver, and his days, once filled with spreadsheets and financial statements, now revolved around driving to doctor's appointments and administering medications. When he wasn't tending to his mother, Koppelman was online, exploring message boards, news sites, and social media. At the time, the story dominating headlines was the return of J.C. Dugard.
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, in 1991, Dugard had been kidnapped while walking to a bus stop near her home south of Lake Tahoe in California. The blonde, freckled 11-year-old was the subject of a nationwide search, but eventually the case went cold. Then on August 26, 2009, Dugard reappeared. For 18 years, convicted sex offender Philip, I cannot roll my R's, Garrido.
Garrido.
Yes, thank you. I can't do it. And his wife, Nancy, had held her captive at their home in the town of Antioch, more than 150 miles from where they'd kidnapped her. Dugard had given birth to 2 of Garrido's, you can say it again if you want
Garrido.
to,
Garridos.
daughters, who were now 11 and 15. To the embarrassment of local authorities, parole officers had visited the Garridos several more times during the years Dugard was missing. They'd failed to check the backyard where the young woman was kept in a network of tents, lean-tos, and sheds.
So you're telling me they were looking out the back window of searching this place and like, them tents don't look suspicious.
Don't be
Nah,
suspicious.
we don't need to go
Don't
to...
be
They could have found her
Yeah,
years
like,
and years.
We don't need to go check those random tents in the backyard. Like, are you serious?
Yep. That's what's happened. Yeah, that is exactly what
Yep.
happened. Koppelman's interest in the Dugard case led him to Web Sleuths, a forum where crime hobbyists and armchair detectives connect and collaborate on unsolved cases. Koppelman gravitated to posts about cold cases, the ones least likely to ever be solved. Until recently, Dugard's had been one of them. Koppelman spent countless hours scrolling through the national database of missing persons and unidentified bodies, known as NAMEUs. There's overlap between the two main parts of the database, the disappeared and the deceased. The trick is finding it. During late nights spent on his computer in a dimly lit corner of his mother's suburban home in El Segundo, California, Koppelman would try to match the characteristics of people who had gone missing with those of the unidentified dead. Finding a likeliness could be enough to generate a tip for law enforcement. When Koppelman noticed that the age and condition of some bodies might make it more difficult for loved ones to recognize them, it sparked an idea. Koppelman liked to draw portraits for fun, and he was pretty good at it. He also had a CD-ROM of the image editing software CorelDRAW. Do you remember that?
No, I have no idea what that is.
That's
Is that like
okay.
a paint?
I think you guys are way older than me.
You're the same age as me. But someone had given it to him as a gift. One day, with his mother napping in the next room, Koppelman installed the program on his computer. It was his first step toward becoming a forensic sketch artist. He started creating lifelike renderings of Jane and John Doe's based on photos taken post-mortem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he used CorelDRAW to open eyes, fill in sunken cheeks, and give faces a more dynamic expression.
Wait, so they were already deceased?
Yeah.
Right.
So he would take crime scene photos and basically like re-edit them so it looks
Right.
like.
Oh,
So
that's
if it
kind of
was person,
cool.
yeah.
That's really cool,
If it was
actually.
skeletal remains, he would put a face.
Oh, I didn't know that was a thing. That's dope as hell, actually.
And then it probably helps too, because then you can post it like, did you see this person? It gets kind of like a timeline,
Right.
because then it looks like how the person actually
Exactly.
looked when they were alive.
Huh.
Yeah. In complicated cases where bodies had decomposed, he recreated facial structures. The goal was to make the dead more recognizable, like you had kind of just said,
Go me.
to loved ones who were searching for them and the police trying to identify them. Once he finished a rendering, Koppelman sent it to NAMEUs, and the database would sometimes publish it. He also posted his work on Web Sleuths, so armchair detectives could use it in their identification efforts. Eventually, Koppelman began working with police departments and the DNA Doe Project, which identifies human remains through genetic testing and genealogical research. Glad to help law enforcement generate leads, and in some instances put a name to a face, Koppelman was almost always an unpaid volunteer.
Oh, wow.
His renderings were instrumental in solving several cold cases, including the identification of the Callie Jane Doe, Tammy Jo Alexander in 2015. But before all that, in 2009, when he was just starting out as an amateur sleuth, Koppelman got interested in the case of the Racine County Jane Doe here in Wisconsin.
Racine, word up.
Racilla.
Hometown.
When she was found near the edge of a cornfield in 1999, the young woman had only been dead about 12 hours. But rain had washed away any evidence that might have been useful to investigators. It seemed likely that the young woman had been murdered elsewhere and dumped. An autopsy determined that she may have been cognitively disabled and that she had suffered long-term abuse and neglect. She had broken bones and a cauliflower ear. Her body also showed signs of sexual assault. More than 50 people from the farming community where she was attended her funeral, but no one knew her name or what happened to her. Her gravestone read, "Gone, but never forgotten." Koppelman read everything he could find about the Racine County Jane Doe, combing through news articles and social media. He learned that she had hazel green eyes, 2 piercings in each ear, a short reddish-brown hair. She was 5'8", 120 pounds, and estimated to be between 18 years old and 30 years old. She was found wearing a men's gray and silver Western-style shirt embroidered with red flowers, a design the manufacturer told police from the mid-1980s. On NameUse, Koppelman plugged in some general search criteria, gender, age, location, and clicked through the results for missing persons. With each one, Koppelman asked himself, could this be her? In most cases, the answer was a clear no, the age didn't match, or the location made no sense. But one entry gave Koppelman pause: Aundria Bowman. Aundria and the Racine County Jane Doe shared physical characteristics, and their ages aligned. Aundria would have been 25 in 1999, which was when the Racine Jane Doe would have been killed. Holland, where Aundria disappeared, sits directly across Lake Michigan from where the Jane Doe was found. So
the math's
Holland literally just sits right across the lake from Racine.
Math be mathin'?
The math's mathin'.
Right. It's just 4 hours by car from one location to the other.
Which is totally doable. He could have, yeah, for sure, 100% did that.
Damn,
Right.
it's only, wow, it seems like
4
it'd be a
hours,
longer
yeah.
drive, but okay.
Tracing the lake's southern shoreline and passing through Chicago. To test the possible identification, Koppelman created a composite image and compared Aundria's photo with one from the Jane Doe's autopsy. He then marked the similarities in red. Oops, sorry. I'm not muted. Uh-oh. I don't know how to do this. Okay. Koppelman took his theory to law enforcement, who found it compelling enough to investigate. To determine whether the Jane Doe was Aundria, police would need to compare DNA from the body with that of someone in Aundria's family. Because Aundria was adopted, authorities had to track down her birth mother. Koppelman knew that could take a while, or not even happen at all, forcing investigators to find other avenues for identification. As the police did their part, Koppelman kept poking around online, learning what he could about Aundria. One day at the end of 2012, he came across a classmates.com page for Aundria, the premium kind you have to pay to keep active, in order to connect directly with former school acquaintances. That brings us now to Kathy Turkanian. Kathy Turkanian's life story seems ripped from the plot of a movie. Her mother, Shirley, had 6 children with 3 different men. Turkanian's stepfather was in the Navy, and the family moved 7 times before she had started 7th grade.
Jeez.
The stepfather was deployed for long stretches, and Kathy's mother was overwhelmed by the demands of taking care of so many children, including one who had epilepsy. With no one looking after her, Turkanian was molested at the age of 10 by the husband of one of her mother's friends, then raped at 12 by a teenager. Yeah, she had a shit life.
Jeez, okay.
She knew she had to escape her existence, so she started to make a plan. In 1972, Turkanian left Virginia, where her family was living at the time, with no clothes except what she was wearing, and without saying goodbye. She was 14 and had no money. She hitchhiked to Tennessee, where she met up with a friend in Memphis, and then went to the city's Greyhound bus station. She didn't have a destination in mind, but noticed another traveler wearing colorful beads who mentioned a party down in New Orleans called Mardi Gras. The next day, Turkanian arrived in the Big Easy. In the midst of the counterculture movement of the 1970s, Turkanian wasn't the only runaway teen in New Orleans. She met a network of young people who helped each other out, offering a place to crash, a job, and tips and tricks to stay off the streets. Through this group, she met Randy Badger, a 19-year-old who'd recently hitchhiked to Louisiana from Los Angeles. Before long, they found a place to stay and were doing everything together. They even did joint work at a circus sideshow. For the first time, Turkanian was living her life how she wanted to. In December 1972, Turkanian and Badger traveled to South Carolina, where it was legal for minors to get married with parental consent. Kathy's parents gave it away gladly. In fact, they insisted on the union.
Yeah, I don't like that. That's just creepy to me. I don't know how any parent would just be okay with that.
I agree.
Yeah, you want to marry someone that's...
And then the fact that they were like, oh yeah, sure, go right ahead. It's like, you're not even going to hesitate that or even try to fight back on that. That's just weird.
Yeah, I don't like it
I
either.
don't like that.
Shirley didn't want to be the person police called if her daughter were to ever be in trouble, so Kathy's stepfather signed the necessary paperwork. So even more shitty.
I was going to say, that's even more creepier in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't like that. That's weird.
The couple were married less than a year when Kathy found out she was pregnant.
Let's add salt to the wound.
It was unexpected news, but also another step into adulthood. Kathy wanted to do better by her baby than her mother had done by her. On June 23, 1974, Kathy gave birth to a healthy baby girl and named her Alexis after the actress Alexis Smith. Shortly after the birth of Alexis, Kathy's relationship with Badger went downhill. While she'd been balancing work with caring for Alexis, her husband seemed more interested in partying with friends, including other women. The final straw came when Alexis was 5 months old. Kathy returned home from a shift to find Badger kissing another woman on their couch, while Alexis was alone in the back room crying without a diaper on.
He sounded like a real winner.
Oh my God.
This was when she decided to leave, but she had to think about Alexis too. In the end, she decided it would be best to go back home to Virginia. During the 5-day Greyhound bus ride, Alexis barely cried. Passengers complimented her courage to continue as a single teen mom. But whatever confidence she felt vanished when she arrived in Norfolk, where her mother picked her up at the station. Shirley didn't throw her arms around her daughter or plant kisses on Alexis's plump cheeks. Instead, she looked the pair up and down and puckered her face in judgment. It turned out that Shirley had been diagnosed with breast cancer and was given only 5 years to live. Kathy quickly realized that her mother expected her to care for her siblings. And while Shirley never said it outright, it was clear she didn't think Kathy should have a child of her own.
Yet, I want you to take it. Yeah.
But yet signs the marriage certificate.
Make it make sense.
Well, no, I want you to take care of the other kids, but I don't think you should have your own kid.
Right.
Like,
take care of mine, but no, you don't worry about yours. No. Horrible mother. One day, casually, Shirley said, "You ran out of formula. How are you going to take care of this baby?" A seed was planted, and from it, Kathy's doubt grew. She increasingly felt like she couldn't give Alexis the life she deserved. Following this, she agreed to give her baby up for adoption. Shirley handled the logistics, assuring Kathy that Alexis would be taken in by a good family through Catholic charities.
We all know where that ends up.
Yeah. Shortly after the adoption was finalized, Kathy left home again. This time, the teenager hoped things would be different. She eventually went to nursing school and met her current husband. They never started a family of their own. For more than 30 years, she didn't have any idea as to who her daughter had grown to be. With blonde hair and a confident smile, she sometimes wondered if Alexis looked like her. She hoped her daughter was happy and that Alexis's adoptive parents knew how lucky they were. Then, in April 2010, a letter arrived at her home in Massachusetts that had upended her life. It was from a social worker who explained that Alexis had disappeared from her adoptive home in Michigan in 1989. Police were investigating a new lead in the case, that Alexis might be a Jane Doe found in Wisconsin, a dead girl.
I see where this is going.
Police needed a sample of her DNA to know for sure. Kathy was perplexed by how little information the letter provided. It didn't include Alexis's adoptive name or the city where she'd lived, nor did it offer contact information for police or any details about Alexis's disappearance when she was 14, the same age she'd been when she ran away from home. Kathy was willing to share her DNA, but she wanted to know more about what happened to her daughter and refused to sit around and do nothing in the meantime. Kathy got in touch with the police and adoption agency, but they refused to tell her what her adoptive daughter's name was or where she went missing from. Because she gave her up for adoption, she had no legal right to know this information. I just need a drink of water.
And I guess that makes sense, too, because it's still an open case, so, I mean, I guess that makes sense.
It's so
Right, 'cause it's an
shitty
open
that they can't...
investigation.
I mean, did she sign anything?
Yeah, she
okay.
legally
to.
gave her up for adoption,
Yeah, you have to,
So
unfortunately.
I guess that makes sense.
Wait,
So-
once they turn 18, can then they...
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
but she's only 14 here. So.
No, I'm just saying,
Oh,
but
yeah,
when they turn 18, they can
Yeah.
try to... Okay.
So despite her misfortune, she took matters upon herself and had her husband search online for missing girls that shared or had a close birth date to her daughters. To their shock, she was the first one listed on the missing persons section of the Michigan State Police Department website. Kathy named her Alexis Miranda Badger, and upon their search for her daughter, she learned that her name had been changed to Aundria Michelle Bowman. She also found out exactly where she'd lived in Michigan. Looking at the photo of Aundria on the police website, Kathy thought, I don't know this person. She'd only remembered her as an infant.
Right.
Yeah.
But when she started looking at her eyes in the photo on the screen, staring back at her, she's like, that looks like me. And that's when she knew Aundria was hers. And she was looking at her little girl. Upon finding out her daughter's name, she tried searching for her on the computer without any luck. She was unable to find her or the names of the adoptive parents anywhere online. Desperate to know the truth, she set up a Find Aundria M. Bowman Facebook page, because she knew kids that went to high school together go looking for one another, as well as a classmates.com page in Aundria's name. She was hoping to connect with her daughter's old friends, and that is exactly what happened. Messages came flying in fast from not only her friends, but relatives that were able to provide her with the names of Aundria's adoptive parents. Brenda and Dennis Bowman. Dennis and Brenda met when Brenda was in high school. He'd been her very first boyfriend. When she graduated from high school, Dennis was in the Navy at that point, but before Dennis even went into the service, he'd asked her if she'd accept his ring upon his return from boot camp. He later stated he knew she was the one as soon as he'd met her. Her cousins, who were the relatives that reached out to Turkanian, described Brenda as very quiet. Brenda and Dennis married in 1971, the same year Dennis was stationed in San Diego. They lived there together for 6 months, and when Dennis received his option for his duty station, they picked Norfolk, Virginia. At that time, they then tried to start a family of their own to find out Brenda had a double uterus, and the chances of her getting pregnant were very slim. So they turned to adoption and applied. They waited for years before they got the call. Dennis described Aundria as this, and obviously they adopted Aundria. Mm-hmm. He didn't get that connection. Dennis described Aundria as the sweetest kid that ever walked. But Dennis also mentioned that when she turned 12, 13 years old, it was as if someone flipped a switch inside her. All of a sudden, she's running away from home, taking drugs from kids at school, lying, shoplifting. One day, she was so mad at Brenda, she stuck her fist through the window of the front door.
So like normal teenage stuff, right?
Right.
And she probably has a lot of built-up emotion, too.
A little bit more, but yeah, think about it.
First of all, she's going through puberty.
And I don't know if, like, they told her she was adopted.
She was adopted.
Yeah, that's
mad
true.
Too.
Maybe
you think kids can tell? Like,
yeah, I think so.
I don't
think
look
so.
like this
I
family.
think they, think about it. Like, yeah, I don't really look like either of them. I wonder if I am.
You're not adopted.
But not only did the classmates.com page lead her to the names of Aundria's adoptive parents, it also led her to Carl Koppelman.
Okay.
Kathy and Koppelman began exchanging messages, which led to a series of long conversations over the phone. Kathy also met other online sleuths interested in Aundria's case, including a woman in New Jersey named Sue Kovacs, who helped Turkanian revamp the Find Aundria Facebook page and expand its reach.
It's actually kind of cool that so many people are like coming together.
There's a lot.
right?
So, yeah,
There's
it's really
a lot
cool.
more.
It's actually
really,
very promising.
Yeah, I like it a lot. During this time, everyone awaited the results of Kathy's DNA test to see if it was a match to the Racine County Jane Doe. But for the people invested in the case, determining whether Aundria's body had been found was just one piece of the puzzle. If Aundria was indeed dead, how had it happened? If she'd been killed, who was responsible? Kathy got in touch with a retired Michigan detective familiar with Aundria's case, a man named Pat O'Reilly. His frankness surprised her. They botched this case from the beginning, Kathy remembered him saying. According to O'Reilly, the person Kathy needed to be looking at was Aundria's adoptive father, Dennis Bowman. On a sunny morning in May 1980, a 19-year-old woman was riding her bike north of Holland, Michigan, when a motorcyclist forced her off the road. The man told her to get off her bike and walk into the woods. The young woman didn't move. All she needed was a moment, to think, to distract him, to do something. The man pulled out a gun, fired a shot past her, and repeated the order. Still, she didn't budge. The man fired the gun again, this time at the ground near her feet. He said he would shoot her next. Just then, a car drove by, and the motorcyclist turned his head at the noise. The young woman took the opportunity to pedal away as fast as she could. The man didn't shoot or chase her, and she was able to flag down someone in a pickup truck who drove her home. Her parents called the police, and the young woman provided a description of the suspect, a white male with tinted glasses and a blue helmet. His motorcycle, she said, had a black top case mounted on the back. By the end of the day, the police had detained a suspect. The young woman took one look at him and confirmed that that was the man who tried to attack her. It was Dennis Bowman, who by then was already a husband and father. At that time, Aundria was almost 6 years old. He was referred for psychological counseling, and a judge determined that he would likely pose a danger to women if he was ever released.
Hey, let me guess, he was.
On February 22nd,
Yeah, of course it was.
1981,
There we go.
Dennis was convicted of assault with intent to commit criminal sexual conduct and sentenced to 5 to 10 years in prison. He was released on January 31st, 1986. So he ended up serving the minimum sentence.
For good behavior, I'm sure.
It doesn't say, but 5 years.
Good
he literally
behavior.
only served
That's what we
5.
hear every single time. They let these ass fucks out every time. Every time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty sick. So he ended up serving the minimum sentence, like I said. When he was first transferred to Kinrose, Brenda picked up hers and Aundria's life and moved there to be closer to Dennis.
So the wife knew.
Yeah.
Okay.
She knew what he went to prison for. Yeah. And she picked Aundria and herself up and moved to be closer to wherever he was serving his time.
God. Yeah, I don't like where this is headed.
Aundria was 11 when he was released from prison. So I think he was 6. She was 6 when he went in.
Yep.
Released at 11 then.
Well, then, okay, so then his comments about his bullshit, when she turned 12, well, look at what happened. You were in prison for 5 years.
I wonder fucking why.
Yeah, no wonder she was running away and felt like she didn't belong.
Yep. Everyone close to the Bowmans was surprised that Brenda stuck around and didn't get Aundria and herself the hell out of this situation.
That's what I was just thinking. I was surprised that she would stick around, too.
Everybody was saying it. Brenda stood by her husband then, and she did so again in 1998. One day that year, a state trooper in Dorr, Michigan, responded to an alarm at the mobile home of 28-year-old Vicki Vanden Brink. She had reported so many break-ins that the sheriff's department had installed a security system. When the trooper arrived at the scene, he found Dennis Bowman walking away from the back door. The Bowmans had moved to Hamilton, a town nestled between Holland and Dorr, in 1989, shortly after Aundria's disappearance, and Dennis told the officer that he was temporarily staying with Vanden Brink, who was a former co-worker of his. He was let go, but when authorities got in touch with Vanden Brink, who wasn't home when the alarm went off, she said Dennis was lying. Dennis then changed his story, telling law enforcement that he'd entered the trailer to use the bathroom. He'd been there at least once before, he claimed, when his daughter Vanessa wanted to sell Girl Scout cookies to Vanden Brink. Skeptical, the police obtained Dennis's permission to search his property. This is Dennis's property.
Yeah.
In the loft of an outbuilding, they found a black duffel bag containing lingerie that was later identified as Vanden Brink's, as well as an illegal sawed-off shotgun, a black sweatshirt, and a mask.
Oh. So, like normal shit you find.
You don't just carry that
You don't
around?
carry that in your car?
Your everyday carry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your EDC?
Yeah. Your EDC.
That's what it's called. Everyday carry. EDC is a whole forum.
I've never heard that.
Look into it.
Yeah,
Okay,
I've never
you guys
heard that
aren't on
either.
Reddit often, I guess. All right.
Dennis pled guilty.
Reddit?
Oh.
Ooh, the internet?
So you are old.
Dennis pled guilty to one count of breaking and entering. His sentencing memo, written by his attorney, doesn't match his 1980 conviction on the prior break-ins that Vanden Brink had reported, which police believe Dennis was responsible for. Dennis's lawyer presented letters written on his client's behalf by various people: the counselor who ran Dennis's sex offender group treatment program, the principal of Vanessa's elementary school, Dennis's boss, and a congregant at Christ Memorial Church who noted that Dennis had taught Sunday school to kindergartners for the past 6 years.
Which is even
I was gonna
creepier.
say, that's an even bigger red flag.
I would have been like,
That's
"Yo,
safe,
let's
right?
get some letters written to make this guy look good." I would have been like, "Let's not
That means
involve."
he was a top contributor to the church. I don't care what anybody
let's
says.
let's
he
not
was.
He
involve.
was paying his way into the church.
Yeah, and
I'm
let's
just-
not involve this dude being with children, because I don't think that's going to help his case. Nah,
No.
it's going to look great.
How was he even legally allowed to teach Sunday school if he's a child molester?
You tell me.
Because it's the church and they do what they want.
That's true.
Yo, I'm sorry if the cops are here, sweetie,
Mm-hmm.
and they found a duffel bag with men's underwear in it.
Who's
Yeah, because we got to switch
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Because
it's me,
With-
apparently.
Oh, it's you.
Apparently
men's,
I'm doing
men's
this.
underwear, a sawed-off shotgun, a mask, and a black hoodie. That right there, but I think I want a divorce. Let alone all the other stuff that you did,
Why is it me in this situation? Why couldn't it be
He's not
you?
going to admit himself. Yeah.
I'm just saying, that alone, the duffel bag would have been raising questions for me. Like, I need to get out of this marriage. But she, like, stayed. She's like, no, that's normal.
I know.
No, he always wears a ski mask. Even on Sunday church, he wears a ski mask. And when he teaches Sunday school, he wears a ski mask. It's
It's like the
normal.
woman's lingerie is actually his.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
He didn't want to say anything.
We know, like, pointers on the chalkboard, he uses a sawed-off shotgun as a pointer on the chalkboard. It's
Well, he's a
normal.
lunatic,
It's
so-
no big deal.
He's a lunatic, so I guess.
The court also received a letter from Brenda, who defended her husband, and from Dennis himself, who wrote of his behavior.
Why the hell does he get to write about himself? Why is it even allowed?
Yeah, here's his. What
Why
he
is
said.
that? Why is that a thing?
Oh,
why is
I'll
it
wait.
like
I don't know.
if you
That
write
really
a
tipped us
if you
off here.
write a nice note about you, you won't go to
So
prison.
he's a narcissist, 100%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say whatever I can to get myself out of the situation, obviously, but this is what he wrote.
Even though there's a smoking gun.
Sometimes we don't realize the problem until it confronts us face to face.
It sounds like
That's
you
what
got
he
more
wrote
than
himself.
That's
yeah.
what he wrote to like defend for his behavior.
Dude,
or
it sounds like you
whatever.
got more than a problem. Like,
He served 1 year at a county jail for this occurrence.
There it is. We all saw that coming.
Yep. Dennis described himself as happily married for 28 years.
uh-huh.
He said that he had 2 daughters, one 25 and the other 11. He didn't mention that the older one had been missing for more than a decade.
Yeah, because why would he?
Why would ya? You're a piece of shit. Why would ya?
Are we making predictions now?
You can. I mean,
He
I'm
did
not
it.
going to tell you.
Yeah,
He
I'm
did it.
thinking the same thing. The dude with the ski mask.
And
I'm
the women's lingerie, yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's the culprit.
I think so too.
But, you know, they'll let him reoffend.
And the
vote.
church says, "Ding-ding-ding."
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
It's the Sunday school teacher.
Anyways, let's keep going. Kathy Turkanian learned the details of Dennis Bowman's criminal record after submitting a Freedom of Information Act request. Based on what Detective Pat O'Reilly had told her, it had seemed logical to dig into Bowman's past. Reading for the first time about what Bowman had done to 2 young women, Kathy felt a terrible certainty, and she's quoted as saying, "When I got his FOIA records, I said, 'Oh, this man killed my daughter.'" If Kathy was right, it would mean that the Racine County Jane Doe wasn't Aundria. That theory made sense only if Aundria was still alive 10 years after she disappeared.
This is the biological mother?
Yes.
Okay.
In 2013, the long-awaited DNA results confirmed it. Kathy wasn't related to the Racine County Jane Doe. She and Koppelman, along with the other amateur sleuths interested in Aundria's story, had thought they were connecting the dots in one single cold case when all along they'd been looking at 2.
So the Racine body is not Andrea.
Not Aundria.
No, that's not,
Okay.
yeah.
So they don't
So take
know.
it.
So they're literally
back to
right
square
back
one.
to square one. They don't
Okay.
know where her body's at. She's still missing.
That's crazy you say, because I've never heard about this case even when I lived in Racine. Like, I never heard anything about
that's true.
this.
I haven't heard of this one either. I saw this on Netflix, and I was like, holy shit, I need to cover this one.
Oh, speaking of Netflix, the Tylenol Murders has a documentary on there.
I saw that.
Yeah,
I need to
check
watch
it
it
out.
still.
Thought of you.
Were we all
Yeah.
star in it, actually?
Bobby Joe actually told me about it, too, at work one day.
Oh, Bobby Joe.
Yeah, we have our own scenes in it.
And I was like, I saw that. I still have to watch it, though, just to see if I missed anything when I covered it. Koppelman and Turkanian were equally yet uniquely obsessive in their approach to detective work. He was thorough and precise, while she was passionate and vocal, I'll say. So, if you haven't already, please, please, please go watch Into the Fire on Netflix. Because Kathy Turkanian is a whole personality by herself, and I was there for it. Like, it was really good.
Just like your spirit animal.
And it's a 2-part documentary, and it's amazing. So please go watch that. As Koppelman calculated the next steps in their investigation, Turkanian was too angry to keep silent. The way she saw it, Bowman needed to be behind bars. With his criminal record in hand, she began writing Facebook posts accusing the Bowmans of being responsible for Aundria's disappearance. So she's writing that as like her status or whatever on freaking Facebook. She's a badass.
She a baddie.
She also assembled a Rolodex of people who'd known her daughter. Russ Foster, who briefly dated Aundria in high school, Linda Behrens, the mother of a classmate, Eli Ramos, who rode the school bus with Aundria, and a couple named the Schaefers, who'd grown up with Dennis and Brenda in Muskegon, Michigan, and whose daughter, Mindy, remembered seeing Aundria in the runaway train video. Kathy learned about Aundria's difficult home life and her anxiety about caring for her baby sister. Turkanian and Koppelman met in person for the first time in 2013. In September 2013, Turkanian and Koppelman met in person for the second time at the Missing in Michigan conference. Organized by state police, the conference was designed to raise awareness and hopefully generate leads in cold cases. Family members and friends of missing persons gathered one Sunday at the Eagle Eye Golf Club in East Lansing. The schedule included panels, support groups, and even DNA collection, so police could look for matches between families and unidentified remains. Turkanian and Koppelman showed up in custom shirts that read "Find Aundria Bowman." The day kicked off with an early morning group therapy session. Turkanian and Koppelman took their seats in a large circle and listened as people introduced themselves. Koppelman scanned the room and was surprised when his eyes landed on familiar faces.
Uh-oh.
He nudged Turkanian, and she looked over. "That's Vanessa," she said, "and that's Brenda." Brenda and Vanessa recognized Turkanian, too. The Bowmans were aware of what Turkanian had been saying about Dennis on Facebook. When it was Brenda's turn to introduce herself, she told the room, "We have a little situation here." Looking at Turkanian, she added, "I can see you very much resemble Aundria." Brenda tried to keep talking, but Turkanian didn't let her. She laid awake so many nights, furious that her daughter's adoptive mother hadn't protected her. "Tell them the truth, Brenda," Turkanian blurted out. "Tell them about your husband." The session descended into a dramatic exchange before finally getting back on track. Afterward, Turkanian hung back as Koppelman approached Brenda, insisting that he only wanted to talk. Though flustered, Brenda seemed eager to explain her side of the story. She insisted that she and Dennis had fully cooperated with police after Aundria's disappearance.
I don't know if I'd say fully, but all right.
I need to drink. I'm not even halfway done with this. This is crazy.
I don't know if I'd say fully, but I guess the time will tell.
Mm-hmm. I mean, she did. But
maybe she did, but I don't know about him.
No, he did not. I will ruin that for you. Spoiler.
Oh, well, you didn't ruin it. Don't worry.
It's kind of a given.
It was totally a given.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like he has a track record or anything.
Right, exactly.
Women.
He did nothing wrong. He's an angel.
Yeah.
She presented a binder full of notes and missing person flyers as proof. She recounted sightings of Aundria. It was clear she still believed that the teenager had run away. According to Koppelman, when he brought up Dennis's criminal record, Brenda replied, "I haven't forgotten what he did, but I do forgive him. I take my marriage vows very seriously." Get the fuck out of here.
Why are okay?
I get out of this freaking conference,
dude. Like,
get out of here.
I get like marriage vows are important, but there's a fine line between keeping your marriage vows and like just not being a crazy person and realizing that the person you married is a psychopath.
I'm with you. I agree. Like, yeah. What else is there to say about that? Koppelman thought her words sounded rehearsed, but not disingenuous. Turkanian had been biting her tongue while Brenda and Koppelman spoke, but now she exploded. "Tell us how you abused, starved, and humiliated her, Brenda," she yelled. Vanessa, after reacting to the verbal attack on her mother, had to be held back by a male attendee. Koppelman remembered... Oh, sorry. I skipped forward a little bit. You need to be held back. So like she yelled at her as she's being retained. "You need to be put in a fucking insane asylum." Koppelman remembered Vanessa saying to Turkanian. The Bowmans and Turkanian avoided each other for the rest of the day. After the conference, Koppelman and Turkanian returned to their respective homes on the east and west coasts, but they'd already decided they needed someone on the ground in Michigan. A private investigator to keep working Aundria's case closer to where she'd gone missing. Turkanian hired Jeffrey Floor, a former Michigan state trooper, who'd helped solve a 1979 gang rape and murder that happened in Holland. Floor soon managed to get his hands on Aundria's police file, which Turkanian and Koppelman had never seen. Oddly, the earliest documents in it weren't from March 1989 when Aundria disappeared. They were dated 4 months earlier.
Interesting.
That was when police responded to allegations of abuse in the Bowmans' home. The report didn't go into detail about what happened, noting only that local authorities had determined the allegations weren't true. I need more water. I feel like this is just...
There's just a lot going on here. Mm-hmm. This is interesting. And it's actually interesting that they weren't allowed to see the police report, I'm assuming, because it's still open.
I don't know.
I'm assuming the PI has access to things the general public doesn't, so that makes sense.
I would imagine. But if one thing was consistent in Aundria's case, it was carelessness. Koppelman and Turkanian were sure law enforcement had missed something. They went looking for people who could fill in the blanks. Over the course of 10 years, Carl and Kathy spent their time getting the word out and getting to know all that knew who Aundria was. Excuse me. I'm going to get into some stories now. When Michelle Timmer was in 10th grade and Aundria in 9th, Michelle recalls that they took the bus to her house, and that when they went to go inside, Aundria turned around and told her not to come in and to just wait there. When Aundria went inside, Michelle saw Dennis immediately start chasing after Aundria and yelling and screaming at her. And she was running away from him. And as she was running away from him, he grabbed her foot and she fell to the ground. When Michelle started looking through the window and didn't see her anymore, all she heard was yelling coming from upstairs. So the Monday after that, when Michelle saw Aundria at school, she asked her about what happened, to which she told her that he had chased her up the stairs and started hitting her because she was late from getting off the bus, when she wasn't late from getting off the bus.
And even if she was, why on earth does that lead to that? That doesn't even make sense. This guy clearly needs help.
Mm-hmm.
She's 14. Even if she's late, who gives a crap?
Yeah. I mean, you can be like, please make sure you get on the bus.
Or let us know if you're going to be late, sure.
Right,
but that is just crazy.
Don't hit her and yell
grab
at her.
foot so she...
Right.
that's just crazy.
That's like...
It's like literal psychopath behavior.
Yeah, that's not good. That doesn't make you look good, my guy.
No.
Kim Payne was invited over to her house, and she remembers sitting at the dinner table with Aundria and her family, and while Brenda and Dennis were eating hamburgers, her and Aundria were only allowed what was called a leftover sandwich. It was ketchup, relish, and mustard on 2 pieces of bread.
So they weren't even allowed to have meat?
They weren't allowed to have what they were eating.
Nice.
Yep. Aundria made a comment to Kim, and that's all she was ever able to eat ever. That's all they allowed her to eat. So Dennis came across the table and hit Aundria so far he almost knocked her out of the chair. Of course, Aundria started bawling her eyes out. Brenda sat there and did nothing about it. She just kept feeding the baby.
Nice.
Kim stated it's as if Brenda turned her back to it and acted like it didn't even happen at all. Jennifer Jones became friends with Aundria in middle school band, where they both played in the wind section. They remained close during their freshman year of high school. One Tuesday afternoon, Aundria came home with Jones, but when it was time to leave 4 days later, she said she didn't want to go home. Jennifer actually would bring extra food upstairs for Aundria to eat after her and her family were done eating.
Oh, so Aundria was staying with Jennifer for a few days.
Yes.
Okay.
According to Jones, Aundria said that her adoptive father would come into her room at night and make her do sexual things that she didn't want to do.
Oh, so he becomes a bigger piece of shit.
Oh, yeah. He's a scumbag. Jones's mother let her stay the night, and the next day took her to the principal's office, where Aundria repeated the accusation to school officials. Jones was sent to class and assured that the adults would handle the situation. Aundria wasn't at school the rest of the day, and Jones assumed that she was in protective custody. Later, she learned that Aundria had gone home with her parents.
How the hell did that happen?
I don't think they gave a shit. They really dropped the ball everywhere here.
Seems like every case that we cover, the ball gets dropped.
I know. It's like they didn't care about it like they do nowadays.
If a kid is saying something like that, it should be taken seriously.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I agree.
I just don't understand what...
Especially
younger.
Looking at the circumstances...
Where they wouldn't have heard anything like this. Where would they get this from if they've never heard
that
anything
she's adopted, too, so
and
that...
And the second she... Okay, so obviously props to Jennifer's mom. She did the right thing, telling her to go tell an adult at school.
Right.
I don't like the fact that the school sent her back with the person that allegedly did this to her.
I agree.
That just doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever.
Horrible. That's supposed to be a safe place, and they literally just put her back.
Right into... Yeah.
Right and back into the situation.
And then who knows what kind of punishment she got for opening her mouth about it. So.
Yeah.
I know. Around the time Aundria confided in Jones and her mother, she also spoke to Arlene Ron, another local mom. Aundria befriended one of Arlene's sons through the church's youth group and had started hanging out at their house. Arlene assumed Aundria had a crush on one of the boys. Eventually, Aundria told Arlene that her adoptive father was abusing her. She also said that Brenda knew and didn't care. Arlene was hesitant to get involved. She told Aundria to talk to her youth pastor. Then one evening, as Arlene pulled into the Bowman's driveway to drop Aundria off, Dennis appeared and told Arlene to stay out of his business. It just made me so uncomfortable, she later said. Arlene never reported the incident to authorities. Within a few months, Aundria was gone. Aundria's friends encouraged her to leave to get out of the situation, but she didn't want to leave the baby there.
Okay, I'm sorry. And why are they acting like she's an adult and can just pick up and leave? She's 14.
Yeah,
I
right.
agree.
What the fuck is she supposed to do?
Yeah, I know. She responded, "No, I have to take care of Vanessa."
She was probably afraid to leave Vanessa there by herself.
Yeah.
Because she knew what was happening to her.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, well, he's going to do worse to her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There were other red flags. The Schaefers, the couple who'd grown up with the Bowmans in Muskegon, knew about Dennis's criminal record and recalled him bragging about sexual conquests as early as high school. They'd always felt uneasy about him, and they kept a watchful eye over their own daughter when he was around.
That's creepy.
I'm getting so fucking pissed off. My eye is actually twitching.
I know. Imagine,
like, what the fuck?
I know. Imagine how Kathy felt. The Schaefers ultimately ended their friendship with the Bowmans after Aundria went missing. When their daughter Mindy found the Facebook page for Aundria, she said her parents had never been contacted by the police about the case. In fact, it wasn't until Copperman and Turkanian connected with them on Facebook that the couple spoke to anyone about their suspicions.
So they just kept it to themselves for that kind of shitty.
Yeah, I don't think they meant it to be that way.
I don't think so. And that's the thing too, is like the other chick that didn't want to get involved. I understand wanting to protect yourself and your own kids and everything, but I think like me thinking about it, I think like what I would do in these situations, and I think I would just do what's right. I wouldn't care about the bad part. I would just be like, no.
That's me too. I'm
just
like,
you know something, please.
This moment for this one person.
Let this be the takeaway of the episode.
I don't
if you
care.
know something, please just fucking report it. Like, seriously.
Yeah, if you definitely know about something, for sure.
I'm like you.
I just wouldn't even think twice about it. I'd be like, no, fuck this asshole. I'm telling everything I know.
I'm right
you hear he wears fucking ski masks?
That could have been vital information. I'm just saying, like this.
And they have this. Like he served time for these two things. Like he's not. He
and
doesn't
the thing
look
too
innocent.
is, even if you have suspicions, please report it. What harm do you get out of that? I'm sorry, like I just don't understand. And if people are worried about, they'll find where I live, I can Google any of you and find out where you live in 10 seconds. Seriously, that's
it's
not
very
going to stop
easy
anybody.
to find out where you live nowadays.
Believe me, I do it for my friends. I know where
and
everybody
can't you
is.
call and say like you don't have to tell them your name?
Yeah,
you can do it anonymously,
anonymous,
yes.
Yeah.
Or star 67 or whatever that bullshit is that we used to do in school.
Yeah, right. There's options.
You know what I'm talking about, right? Where you come up as a caller unknown or whatever. Not that I ever did that.
Telephone?
Telephone?
What's telephone?
Facebook turned up another source, one who believed that Dennis Bowman's criminal behavior had persisted between his convictions in 1980 and 1998. Meta, who had found the Find Aundria Bowman page, sent a message to the administrators describing what had happened to her on a bright September afternoon in 1989 when she was 6. As she was walking to a friend's house, she was flagged down by a man in a truck who promised to take her to see some puppies. He told her that her mother said it was okay and pulled Meta into the cab. As he drove, the man stroked her face.
Ooh, it's fucking
Meta's
creepy.
stomach churned. Is that it? Meta asked again and again, pointing to each barn. And turn off they passed, hoping that was where the puppies would be. And then they came up to a 4-way intersection and there was a cop. So he told her to lay down, and then he started tucking her hair behind her ear and stroking her cheek. And she thought he was a nice guy at first. And she thought to herself that if he knew her mom, he had to be a nice guy. And then suddenly, his whole demeanor changed. The driver pulled into a rural area near the town of Hamilton. The man parked the truck, grabbed a rope from the back of the truck, and came around to the passenger side and yanked Meta by the neck. He dragged her into the woods, to which she started screaming. He then took off all her clothes and wrapped her blue sweater, printed with the words "Young at Heart" around her mouth to keep her quiet. He tied her hands behind her back with a length of rope. Then the attacker knelt over Meta and unzipped his pants. Sometime after, the man got startled at the sound of barking dogs nearby, so he ran off, leaving Meta all alone. Meta untied herself and ran to the main road, naked and barefoot. 2 cars pulled over, and someone called 911. Unfortunately, she was sexually assaulted at 6 years old.
Jesus Christ.
By Dennis?
We will get there. But, yes. It's what's presumed. It was never proven and never... Yeah. Never proven, but very
Fuck
likely.
Fuck you, Dennis. That's all I gotta say.
Fuck you, Dennis.
Very likely. I mean, he matches everything, so...
I am glad that she is alive, though. I'm glad
Me
he did
too.
not kill her, because obviously that was his intent, 100%.
Oh, for sure.
The police visited Meta.
And, wait, pause. Let's give her huge props. At 6, she figured out how to untie herself and run.
Yeah,
I didn't even think I
true.
could walk
Smart
at
ass
6.
kid.
Shut up, please, you could. The police visited Meta's home that night, and a sketch artist created a rendering of the perpetrator and his vehicle, a red pickup truck with a white cab. But a suspect was never found. The case went cold, and the statute of limitations eventually expired.
Which I feel like they should never expire.
No.
I agree.
I'm sure they asked this little girl, like, was he wearing a ski mask? And they're like, no. Nope, it's not Dennis. Nope, he didn't have a ski mask on. We gave that back to him after he got out of prison. So we know that he wears ski masks.
As she got older, what bothered Meta most was that the man who'd attacked her was still out there and could be hurting other girls. She kept tabs on local news articles, police statements, and social media posts looking for any stories like hers. But it wasn't until she stumbled upon the Find Aundria Facebook page that Meta believed she could finally name the man who lured her into the truck, Dennis Bowman.
Mm-hmm.
When Kathy met Meta and heard her story for the first time, they formed an immediate bond. Meta really gave Kathy the feist she needed to get this case solved. Turkanian is quoted as saying, "I was already angry and motivated, but once I met Meta, I was like double that. We connected on that level." Meta described their connection as a soul connection and calls Turkanian her soul mama. Turkanian and Koppelman were now convinced that Dennis Bowman was a serial predator who had killed Aundria and covered it up by claiming that she'd run away. By 2016, Turkanian said, "I was screaming from the tops of Facebook that he had my daughter buried in his backyard, but any evidence remains circumstantial at best. There was no proof Aundria was dead, let alone murdered, and nothing tied Bowman to other unsolved criminal cases, including Meta's abduction. Between 2013 and 2017, Turkanian and Koppelman met in Michigan 4 separate times. While there, they occasionally caught up with Chris Haverdink, someone who went to school with Aundria and was in the grade above her. He was also the detective who'd taken over Aundria's case. He found it interesting that when they went to school together, there wasn't any talk of her even missing or running away at all. Usually, they met him on the patio of Goog's Pub and Grub, a local establishment next to the Days Inn where Meta worked and helped Turkanian and Koppelman get discounted rooms. Haverdink agreed that Bowman was suspicious, but that wasn't enough to arrest him. Turkanian and Koppelman visited Michigan for the last time in May 2017. It was becoming clear that they had gotten as far as they could on their own. A break in the case would almost certainly have to come from law enforcement, a witness, or Bowman himself. Before flying home, Turkanian and Koppelman sat in their rental car outside the Bowman's home in Hamilton after driving to their first home that was now torn down. After years of examining Google Street Maps and satellite images of the Bowman's current home, Turkanian had zeroed in on a concrete slab at the back of the property that had been changing constantly on Google Earth's bird's eye view. She was convinced Bowman had buried her daughter underneath it. They even went as far as flying a drone with a camera into the Bowman's backyard while they were parked across the street.
They were like, fuck it, we don't give a shit.
She knew with absolute certainty that her daughter was buried in that exact spot, with zero doubt in her mind. Carl was doubtful of Kathy's theory due to the fact that they lived in a different location at the time of Aundria's disappearance. Given there was a wooded area across the street from the Bowman's previous home, he figured it made the most sense that she'd been buried in the wooded area across the street from their own old home, as opposed to going through all the work to move her body into the backyard of a brand new home. Logically, That just made the most sense to him. But Kathy continuously argued, of course. However, Koppelman never told her she was crazy or that her theory was stupid. He just kind of rolled with it. Turkanian even went as far to call the police and demand they got a search warrant because her body was in that backyard. And their response was, you can't just go dig up somebody's backyard because the mom has a feeling. But
Or you should be able to.
in this case, yes. But unfortunately, I get it. But Dennis Bowman was still at the top of their suspect list. Turkanian even went as far as calling Dennis the murderer all over the Find Aundria Bowman page. And she even purchased a billboard down the road from the Bowman's house and put up a missing poster for Aundria Bowman.
It's like a fuck you. You got to sit and look at
yes.
this now.
Yes, it's exactly what it is. And I God bless her. Kathy wrote letters to the Bowmans on a daily basis, as well as called their landline multiple times a day. At one point, she called them up, and the machines answered, to which she ripped into them on that recording, hung up, called them right back, ripped into them with another voicemail, hung up, and did it again.
Jeez.
I love this lady.
Yeah, me too. The next week, their phone had been disconnected. Detectives did state that Kathy may have been very close to crossing some lines that caused them to have to take a step back and calm the Bowmans down. Brenda Bowman said she was filing charges for harassment if Kathy were to call one more time. Kathy Turkanian fought for her daughter like any good mother would have. It hurts me to say that she fought more for her than anyone else did in her life while she was alive. When I tell you this woman takes the term fighter to a whole new meaning, I mean that shit. It was amazing to see just how far a mother with that much anger will go for her baby girl. A lady in the documentary called her a pit bull with lipstick, and that is exactly what Kathy Turkanian is. I couldn't have said it better myself. While Aundria's case was in limbo, the Racine County Jane Doe was identified. Peggy Johnson was never reported missing. She was last seen at a homecoming dance in Harvard, Illinois in 1994, and most people who knew her assumed she'd run away. Her aunt, however, was worried enough to take out a classified ad in the paper, but nobody seemed to suspect that something terrible might have happened to the auburn-haired girl. Johnson disappeared shortly after the death of her mother, the sole parent in her low-income household. The 19-year-old found herself orphaned and homeless, with a developmental disability that made it difficult for her to get a job. By chance, she met a nurse named Linda LaRoche, who offered her work as a live-in housekeeper and nanny to her children. The teenager jumped at the opportunity. Over the next 5 years, LaRoche abused Johnson, beating her, starving her, and forcing her to live in a crawl space. The violence culminated in 1999 when LaRoche allegedly murdered the 23-year-old. When Johnson's body was found dumped in Racine, Wisconsin, the cause of death was determined to be sepsis resulting from pneumonia. An autopsy also revealed decaying teeth, broken ribs, evidence of sexual assault, and a cauliflower ear deformity. 20 years after Johnson's death, Wisconsin police received a tip from a concerned citizen about a nurse who'd confessed to killing someone who worked for her in the late 1990s. In early November 2019, Racine County authorities announced both Johnson's identity and LaRoche's arrest. In March 2022, Linda LaRoche was convicted of Johnson's murder, and in May 2022, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Dude, that's crazy how long it takes
I know.
for this shit to
I've always
get
thought that.
solved.
Yeah. Johnson's murder received nationwide attention both preceding and following her identification. The revelation was bittersweet for Turkanian. She was glad that the girl she once thought might be her daughter had finally been identified, but Aundria was still out there, and she was starting to think nothing was ever going to happen. That was until Turkanian's phone rang. Meta's name flashed across the screen. Turkanian answered, and without even saying hello, Meta announced, "They got him." Early morning, the day that Meta called Kathy, Meta had received a message from somebody on Facebook that was friends of a neighbor who happened to live on the same block as the Bowmans. The place was swarming with police. Patrol cars clogged the streets, and flashing lights reflecting off the windows of surrounding homes. Something was going on, something big. Turkanian felt dizzy. There was only one thing she could think to do. She hung up the phone with Meta and called Koppelman. Koppelman still did forensic sketching and online sleuthing on the side, but he'd returned to full-time work as an accountant after his mother passed away, so he was sitting at his desk when he received her call. Koppelman listened as Turkanian described what was happening at the Bowmans. They were sure it had to be connected to Aundria's disappearance. By that afternoon, the news was out. Bowman had been arrested by the Allegan County Sheriff's Office, but not because of anything to do with Aundria. He'd been arrested in relation to a murder Turkanian and Koppelman had never heard of.
So the plot thickens.
Oh, yeah. One committed 9 years before Aundria's disappearance, more than 800 miles away from the shores of Lake Michigan. Kathleen Doyle was the daughter of a Navy officer and the wife of a pilot. At the time of her murder in 1980, she'd been married just 9 months. Her husband was deployed on the USS Eisenhower in the Indian Ocean. Kathleen Doyle and the couple's tabby cat, Ike, were living alone in a small Cape Cod home on Granby Street in Norfolk, Virginia. Doyle was an aspiring author who'd recently taken up journaling. The 25-year-old wrote about her anxieties and her excitement for the future. In the week prior to her death, she wrote in her journal, "I've often wondered what prompts writers to write. Somewhere along the line, I developed the urge to. I know I'm not ready for the written word. I feel I must have many years of living left before I write something worthwhile." The evening of September 9th, 1980, one of Kathleen's good friends, Vivian, came over that night to have a couple glasses of wine. Vivian stated she'd stayed only a couple of hours and left somewhere around 9:30. The next day, Vivian started to get concerned because she couldn't get in touch with Kathleen. Vivian asked her husband, Jim, if he'd be okay taking a ride over to Kathleen's house. As Vivian slightly pushes on the front door, she quickly realizes that it's essentially open.
Uh-oh.
Upon entering Kathleen's home, she notices the 2 wine glasses that they drank from the night before still sat on the coffee table in the living room, which struck her as odd. When she walked around the corner to open Doyle's bedroom door, a murder investigation arose from there. Here we have a woman who was killed in her own home, and she was assaulted in the most brutal way. This was overkill. The room was torn up, the mattress had been pushed off the box spring, as if there had been some sort of struggle. Kathleen was laying on top of the bed, spread out on the floor. Kathleen had been stripped and gagged, was found with her arms tied behind her back with a cord. She'd been strangled with an electrical cord.
Jesus.
She had numerous bruises throughout her body, all the way down to her abdominal area. She was raped and stabbed in the chest and back. She also had a burn mark on her right cheek that would have been the diameter equivalent to either the end of a cigar or a Lincoln log. And if you don't know what a Lincoln log is, it's a toy for a child that they used to build what looked to be a log cabin. But what struck the investigators as strange is that Kathleen didn't have any children. They did find the charred Lincoln log in the trash can of her bathroom and took that in as evidence.
What a weird...
That's a weird object to use.
I thought so too, but I was like, I'll mention it. It's important to mention.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
When Vivian and Jim found Kathleen and tried to call the police department, they could hear the dispatcher, but the dispatcher couldn't hear them. When the police forensically processed the phone, they quickly realized that the mouthpiece had been removed. Authorities suspected an intruder had done it, a stranger.
So this person's smart as hell.
Yes. And this couldn't have been the first time the perpetrator had done something like this.
And it's not.
No.
The
The crime scene immediately gave the police some frustrations because they didn't have anything that would allow them to start to look for the person that had so viciously attacked Kathleen.
What about the Lincoln log? Obviously, he was holding it.
They looked for fingerprints throughout the home in hopes they could identify them, and there were none.
He probably was wearing gloves.
The only fingerprints, he must have been. The only fingerprints that were found were from Vivian and Kathleen, consisting with them having been together Tuesday night.
Or he burned his fingerprints off.
There were also a couple of latent fingerprints that were of Kathleen's husband. He was deployed in the middle of the Indian Ocean on an aircraft carrier, so the police knew where he was. Mm-hmm. They had to focus on the men who didn't go out on deployment with Kathleen's husband, as well as the neighbors. And once they were able to rule these people out, there was nothing more to follow up that they had access to or knew about at the time. The case was essentially cold for 40 years.
Holy crap.
40 years. I haven't even been alive 40 years. That's crazy to me.
Wow, that's a long time. Holy crap.
When Brenda found out why her husband had been arrested, she was in complete denial. She said they were getting a lawyer. He didn't do anything. They've got the wrong guy. In her mind, he wasn't even in Virginia because they lived in Michigan at the time when Kathleen was murdered.
Oh, it's not like he could have just went there. Gee, I don't know.
She said so it couldn't have been Dennis.
Lay off the Delulu
Dude,
juice.
For real, how is this lady be like, yeah, no, he's innocent? He has a history of this. Like, it's not like this is out of the blue first time. He's the nicest dude on the earth.
And Virginia's not that far from Michigan. I'm sorry. He easily could have done that.
Well, dude's in the Navy, ain't he?
He is. Kathleen's family was incredibly involved in her case. Her father, Captain O'Brien, was a member of the United States Navy. Captain O'Brien was very much like Kathy Turkanian. He, too, doubled down on his efforts to get the police department to investigate. Really do something, don't just pay me lip service. Kathleen's mother took her cat in when she died. Kathleen's aunt remembered her always saying, if he could just talk. Kathleen's mom kept Ike until he was incredibly ill, and he died in her arms on the way to the vet.
Aww.
And she was inconsolable. Tim, Kathleen's father, explained that Kathleen's mother felt as if she was losing Kathleen all over again when her cat passed.
Oh, that's so
sad. You know
sad.
What's crazy, actually, to go off what you said? Because you know how she said she wished the pet could talk?
Yeah.
There's
I think that all the time.
There's actually pet psychics.
Shut up.
Swear to God.
Do you believe it, though?
I do, 100%. Because I follow this lady on TikTok who did that. They had a husky, and they met with this pet psychic, and the dog was telling the psychic about the vacation they just took. How would the psychic know about their vacation?
That's insane.
And the dog was talking about how much fun he had.
That's
and like
crazy.
how he loved swimming in the ocean, which is where they went, was the beach. And the psychic knew all that.
Wow.
And they didn't post pictures because I was like, oh, she probably looked them up on social media.
I was just going to say, yeah.
They did not post any pictures of their trip.
Wow, that's crazy. That is kind of cool. While Kathleen's mom and aunt were finding it difficult to get out of bed each morning, Kathleen's father, Tim, a.k.a. Captain O'Brien, was the one who decided to act. He needed answers. He needed justice. He continued to push the investigation until he passed away in 2016. Police unfortunately didn't get any answers prior to his death.
Damn.
Kathleen's aunt, I know. It was heartbreaking when I saw that. Kathleen's aunt reached out to the police in Norfolk, and let them know that...
Norfolk. She said Norfolk.
I think that's how it's supposed to be said. And
she said,
say
what, Norfolk?
I don't know.
Down there in Norfolk.
I think that's how it actually is pronounced.
I think it is, too. It's just funny. I wasn't expecting
that. And let them... So the aunt reached out and let them know that the family still wanted to make sure that they knew that even though he wasn't here anymore, they wanted to carry on and make sure this case was resolved.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Detective John Smith transitioned to the cold case unit in August 2018, and upon his transition, he started reviewing Kathleen's case file, and he found out that there were 2 specimens of DNA left behind by the offender. Seminal fluid on the bedspread and seminal fluid from the rape kit. And the DNA on the bedspread had been reserved for several years. They had few leads until serial killer Henry Lee Lucas was arrested in 1983. Lucas claimed that he and a partner, Otis Toole, were responsible for hundreds of unsolved murders across the country, including Kathleen Doyle's. The following year, police charged the pair, but Lucas's confessions were later revealed to be false, and the charges were dropped. In a letter to the editor published by the Virginian Pilot in 2003, John Timothy O'Brien, Kathleen Doyle's father, he chastised detectives for their missteps and expressed the steadfast hope that his daughter's killer would be caught.
I don't really understand why serial killers and people that do crimes admit to crimes they didn't actually do. Like, I don't understand what they get out of that.
I don't know if it's for, like, I'm going to have more credit in prison type thing.
Yeah,
or,
perhaps. But, like, the thing is, like, this chick was a minor, so, like, why admit that you killed her when you didn't? Like, I just don't get it. Like,
No, this is the Kathleen Doyle we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, okay. But still, it's like, why admit that you killed her when you didn't? Like, I just don't get it.
Okay.
Like, they already were going for a long time.
Well, look at it this way. If they're saying they killed hundreds of people, obviously they're not right in the brain. So in their mind, it might be like them flaunting or thinking it's like
true. That's true.
A cool fucking thing to do, that like you kill people or some shit. I don't know.
I just don't get it.
Psychopaths, man. They don't make no sense.
I agree.
And then it's like they'll find out that you're lying. Like obviously it didn't
Right.
add up. So it's like what did you get out of that? What
So
was
now
the
you just look
point?
like a jackass.
And the case was dismissed. So now you just look like a fucking tool.
Yeah.
I don't get it either. And it happens a lot.
It does.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
Eventually, science caught up with this case. Genetic genealogy, which compares unidentified DNA with a huge number of samples stored in databases, was becoming a popular way of investigating cold cases. Authorities didn't expect the method to produce exact matches, but rather partial ones. Genetic relatives police could use... Sorry. I'm struggling over here. Genetic relatives police could use to triangulate and identify potential suspects. Norfolk investigators partnered with Parabon Nano Labs.
I can't with that word. I can't.
I think I say it a lot now. A leader in the field to test the DNA found on her bread spread that was collected at the scene of Doyle's murder. Soon, based on genealogical research, they had a list of 31 suspects.
Okay.
Wow, that's
so they're
a
getting
big,
somewhere.
That's still a big list,
Yeah.
though.
It is,
So
but
they retested the bed
better than
sheets
thousands.
or bedspread
That's
after
true.
all this
That's
time.
true. It's a dude with the ski mask.
Investigators needed to collect DNA from each person on the list to conduct a direct comparison. But with the suspects spread across several states and a backlog of other cases on their desks begging for their attention, the process could take law enforcement months or even years. Then, the first week in November 2019, the Norfolk area was the site for a Regional Homicide Investigators Association meeting, and so Detective Smith from Norfolk Police Station went to this conference. It was an opportunity to learn about new technologies, collaborate on strategies, and exchange information. The Norfolk team, which had the list of suspects in the Doyle case in hand, got acquainted with the team from Michigan, where, as it happened, one of the people on the list lived. The first thing Detective Smith needed to do was prove or disprove that Dennis Bowman was in Norfolk, Virginia in 1980. Reading more about the other case that Bowman had been arrested for, Detective Smith learned that Dennis had attempted to take her into a secluded area and fire 2 rounds at her. He also read that the judge in the court records said that Dennis Bowman is a danger to women. And if you need a refresher, this offense was in May of 1980 in Michigan. Kathleen's murder was in September 1980 in Norfolk, Virginia. And it was 596 miles away from Michigan. At this point in his search, Detective Smith is thinking they're not going to get this guy out of jail for a serious offense. Get this guy out of jail for a serious offense. There's no way Dennis Bowman could be the same offender responsible for Kathleen.
And why not?
That's what Detective Smith is thinking. But from here, Detective Smith was able to get a court transcript from the 1980 arrest of Dennis Lee Bowman. In the document, it read, "Your Honor, my client is not here. He is a member of the U.S. Navy and is away on his 2-week summer camp requirement in Norfolk, Virginia."
Oh.
And this was dated September 16th, 1980. So Dennis was in Norfolk, Virginia the day Kathleen was killed.
Oh, shit.
Coincidence? I think the fuck not, folks.
At that point, Detective Smith knew they had to get the guy they were looking for. Now, all he needed was to get a known sample from him to do the DNA comparison. Now that brings us back to how Kathy Turkanian was saying things about them that they didn't like, and her relentless calls and persistent voicemails. What the Bowmans didn't know was that the police station was using their calls to keep the line of communication open to help solve the case of Kathleen Doyle, to facilitate getting the Bowmans to come in to discuss their concerns about Kathy. So they used Kathy doing this to their advantage without anybody knowing. Dennis and Brenda came into the sheriff's department where authorities offered everyone something to drink during their meeting with them.
Can I get you a coffee or something?
Dennis drank the entire time.
What a dumbass.
They then took that cup and tested his DNA. The results confirmed that the semen found on the scene of Kathleen's Doyle murder
sneaky.
Yes, they were
came
one
from
step ahead.
Bowman himself.
There it is.
Okay, I was
folks.
thinking, like, so, it's going to sound really fucked up, but, like, how are they going to get a sample from? Like, do they need him to, like, jerk off into a cup, or?
No, just saliva. It's just fine.
Okay, because, like, honestly, if I was, like, there worried about, like, me getting caught, it'd be like, I don't know if I can perform right now.
Let's say you just drink some coffee. Yeah, so can you do your thing in that cup?
Yeah, like, I don't, like, I'm limping right now. There's no way that this is going to work out.
Although if he peed because he drank the coffee, that would have been a good one, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Norfolk law enforcement issued a warrant for his arrest. 2 days later, on November 22nd, 2019, Meta called Turkanian to report the police raid. Within a few months...
Oh, shit, they raided his ass?
They raided his ass.
Yeah, that's when, like when I mentioned earlier, Meta called Turkanian. I'm going back to that.
I'm doing the hand claps because Norfolk Police Department, you ate.
Within a few months, Bowman would be extradited to Virginia to stand trial. By then, he'd already confessed. He confessed to this murder. He admitted to entering Doyle's home through a back window. He claimed that he was drunk and that it was an attempted robbery. He said he didn't expect to find Doyle in the house, that he didn't plan to kill her, but she was there, so he did.
That sounds like the biggest crock of shit I've ever heard in my life.
1,000% on your side here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the police were like, yeah, that happens.
Yeah, whatever.
That's okay. Yeah.
And who does a planned robbery drunk? Like,
I've been drunk a lot and never been like, I'm going to break into that house.
Yeah, like, why would that even cross your mind?
Not normal.
You're more prone to mistakes and shit. Like, that doesn't even make sense.
But he didn't leave his fingerprints. But he
That's
did
because
leave
that's-
his semen.
that's because-
What if he didn't leave that?
That's because he wasn't drunk.
I don't believe he was drunk for 2
No.
seconds. I believe this was
He
planned.
was just trying to make
100%.
himself sound not as
Yes,
bad.
exactly. He's
Yeah.
trying to bullshit again.
That's exactly. You're right. You are exactly right, I think. Okay.
I never leave the house without my drunk gloves.
And
I
Wendy's
always
lingerie, apparently.
As with the resolution of the Racine County Jane Doe investigation, Kathy Turkanian wasn't sure how to feel about the news in the case of Kathleen Doyle. Bowman was behind bars, but Turkanian felt like she was still waiting for her turn, for her daughter's turn at justice. Even though Dennis was arrested for a brutal homicide that took place in Virginia, it was still a goal of Michigan State Police to find Aundria Bowman. Dennis wanted to stay in Michigan to be close to Brenda, and detectives knew that he was going to be extradited to Virginia. And that's when detectives decided to make a tentative offer. If Dennis agreed to be honest about Aundria, then they would consider allowing him to stay in Michigan. When the Norfolk Police Department came to arrest Dennis Bowman on the Kathleen Doyle homicide, Michigan state officers assisted them in a search of the property with ground-penetrating radar and the cadaver dogs. Not only were the two forces looking for evidence in the case of Kathleen Doyle, but they were also looking for any remains or remnants of Aundria on his property. Unfortunately, their search proved to be unsuccessful. They didn't find anything. So authorities resorted to continuing to put pressure on Dennis and demand to know where Aundria was. All of a sudden, during their attempts to get information out of him, Dennis expressed he wanted to meet with Brenda, which is a very unique ask. So they got approval from the sheriff's department to have a meeting between Dennis and Brenda that was supervised by 2 detectives. When Dennis was brought back into the interview room, one of the detectives met him out in the hallway. When the 2 met in the hall, Dennis told the detective, "I hope you have your cameras rolling."
What a pompous ass.
Yeah.
He told Brenda Aundria's dead and that she'd been dead from the start. The story he told was that he came home that night after dropping her off at work with the baby, and the baby was sleeping, so he laid her on the couch in the living room. He then went up to the top of the stairs, and Aundria was coming out of his and Brenda's bedroom. Dennis then asked Aundria what she was doing, and she responded that she was leaving, which resulted into an argument. Dennis claims he said, "No, you're not going. You're not going anywhere." And she responded, "Well, I'll just tell the counselors again that you molested me." He responded, "No, you will not." And then he hit her. She fell backwards down the stairs and then ran down and when he ran down the stairs to check on her, she didn't have a pulse and wasn't breathing. Bullshit.
Yeah,
I don't
that's the
believe this.
dumbest fucking story ever.
And he said her neck, it didn't feel right. It was just bad. That's what he said to Brenda. Like,
Okay.
his exact word. It was bad. He then
Yeah,
explained
after you
her...
snapped it.
I think this whole story's bullshit.
Hey, I'm calling bullshit, too.
He then explained her head rolled over, and she just stared. Like, dull eyes going nowhere, is how he explained it. Yep.
Sounds way too cliche and too perfect to fit his narrative.
Yep.
It's too convenient. Doesn't make any sense.
His reasoning for not calling the police was that he couldn't lose Brenda and Vanessa. She was only 14 months old.
Yeah, because if he truly cared about his kid, he would have never done this.
Yeah.
So a big fuck you, Dennis.
He didn't know what to do in the situation. And and if he called and told them anything, they'd put him back in prison. And then...
Well, no shit.
And then he goes on to say he wrapped her in a blanket and took her body out into the barn and hid her. He then came back inside and called the police and reported her missing. He stated she laid out there for a couple of days. He found a cardboard barrel and he attempted to stick her body in the barrel, but she wouldn't fit. In order to make her fit, he said he needed to cut her legs off. And then a day or two after, when the neighbors set their garbage cans out, he rolled the barrel down and set it next to them. The next morning, he came out and she was gone.
I don't believe that for 2 seconds
No.
either.
Kathy Turkanian called this entire story bullshit, much like we are. She said, if anything, he threw her daughter down the stairs.
Yep, I believe that.
I must say I do agree so myself. He's a coward, and Kathy called him the same thing. Because he is. He's a fucking he's a coward.
Do you realize he didn't say anything about the money? He didn't say a word.
That's all bullshit. I'm sure.
Oh, it's 100%
Yeah.
bullshit.
Well, obviously, because if you killed her, she didn't steal money. You probably pocketed the money and didn't tell Brenda you had the money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, he was just probably using it to make it sound like the girl
he was, for sure. He was
Yeah.
trying to blame anybody else but himself. Law officials knew that in order for there to be a higher chance of Dennis being charged and convicted, it'd be beneficial for them to have Aundria's remains. And they knew their window of time was shrinking because he was going to be heading off to Virginia to answer to those charges. Officials starting to think the story about him putting her out with the neighbor's trash was possible, but it seemed too risky. So at this point, they're intercepting letters that he's writing to Brenda that are contradicting some of the things Dennis had said in his confession. A letter from December 12th, 2019 read, "Dearest love, I want you to know something between you and me, just us. Aundria did fall. She did break her neck, and I did hide her body, but I did not throw her body in the trash. I placed her body in a proper grave next to a private graveyard. She was wearing jeans and her favorite sweater. She had a gold necklace with a heart and cross on it. I wrapped her in a clean white sheet, neat and tight like a mummy. I also wrapped her hands and feet with a red ribbon. She liked that color. Then I placed her in a new 6-foot by 8-foot silver tarp, sprinkled cedar chips, cloves, and pieces of cinnamon between her and the tarp, and then filled in the grave and watered down the dirt. 2 weeks later, you could almost see where she was. 2 months later, you couldn't. In 30 years, I have passed her more than 100 times. I'm sure she's with God. Now you say you don't know the truth? The truth is I love you. I love Vanessa, and I loved Aundria. You've known me for 50 years, and you say you don't know me anymore? Well then, you'll have to make up your own mind. I will never forget you. I will have you forever carved on my heart. Denny."
Dude is like anything to like, oh, poor me, poor. I passed her 100 times after I killed her.
This guy is seriously mentally fucking ill.
Yes.
Why on earth? Like,
Fucked
just
in the head.
listening
Fucked in
to
the
him
head.
describe that. Like,
This isn't a letter.
He's proud of that. And 2, please tell me that she turned this letter in. Like, what? Please
Well,
tell me they
so
didn't have to get like a warrant to see
Don't
this.
they read everything that they
They
send?
do. They
That's
read
what I
yeah.
thought.
Yes.
Okay. I hope
Also,
to God
it's
she-
bullshit.
I hope to God
It's
she-
bullshit.
I figured, but I hope
It's
she still
bullshit.
divorced him at this point. Please tell me she fucking
No.
left this guy.
But you're my
No.
Denny.
Even at the end, it's fucked. This whole thing is just completely fucked. I don't ever want to do a kid's case again after this. It's fucked. I think I need to stay away from kids for a while after this.
I think like every case you've done is kids'
Yeah.
case.
I hate it. It's like they call to me, and I don't know why, but the kids call to me.
Are you a murderer?
No, do not. No. What? No, I'm not a murderer.
Reel it back in, folks.
Officials took these letters very seriously. They went and searched parameters of graveyards in the area with ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs. They treated every single letter as if he were maybe telling the truth now. After a while, he'd been up to 5 different stories as
Holy
to what
fuck.
happened and where their daughter was actually
See,
baried.
he thinks this is funny. It's
Yeah,
like some fucking
it's a
goose
game.
Getting
chase
some
for
sick
him. Yes.
kind of
Yeah.
fucking
It's a goose chase
shit
for him.
off of this, yeah. So now officials are hoping they can get Brenda to talk to Dennis and get him to tell her the truth for once and for all. I'm going to play some phone calls between Brenda and Dennis. So I'm going to play those now. Okay?
Okay.
All right, we're ready.
Are we?
This is a call from
Dennis.
an inmate at Allegan County Correction Center. This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
You may not want to listen to what I have to say, but the prosecutor here still will not charge without her body. All right. If it came to the time that you decide to tell me what I need to know, you would stay in Michigan for life, which would enable us visits. That's not guaranteed, but I have to hang on to any threat I can have.
This is a call from
Dennis.
This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
I can't pull myself together. I have dreams of it. Dreams of what? Aundria, you, everything. I still want closure with knowing where she is. I want her baby girl home with me in a very pretty urn. Then I can finally realize that she's home where she belongs. I buried her in a real grave. So I live like this the rest of my life. You don't have to live like nothing the rest of your life. If we can't get past this, I can't. I can't get it totally past. I tried to explain that to you. The only help we'll get from now on is from God. I don't care anymore, Donnie. One way or another, whatever happened, I will still love you no matter what. There's a possibility we could have somewhat of a life here in Michigan. I want to hear you say you believe there's hope. That's all I got. I believe you. I will tell you exactly what Aundria is. She's very close. I hope so. So she was. Aundria was buried when I was born. We didn't live here. We weren't even. We didn't even know this. Grandma's next door. Where we were at the old house, I was there buried. When we found out we were losing, I took the barrel over to our house. I dug the hole, and I put the barrel in it. Again, we covered it all up. She's been right there the whole time. Now you know.
Okay. So, the last phone call was kind of mumbly. So, just in case you missed what Dennis was saying, I'm going to re-mention it. But only what he was saying. I feel like Brenda sounded pretty clear.
Yeah.
If you heard it just fine and don't want to rehear it, please feel free to skip 10 to 20 seconds forward. So this is what he said. I will tell you exactly where Aundria is. She's very close. Oh, she is. Brenda, Aundria's buried in our backyard. Brenda, she's there. Where we were at the old house, I had the barrel buried. When we found out we were moving, I took the barrel over to our house. I dug the hole, and I put the barrel in it, all right? Then I covered it all up. She's been right there the whole time. Now you know. I have chills right now.
I'm
He's
also
a bigger piece of shit than even before.
Brenda. I'm also a little bitch, and I sound like a jackass. Mm-hmm. Brenda.
And
Brenda.
Oh, I hate this case. In the first week of February 2020, with a thick layer of snow blanketing the ground, police returned to the Bowman's property. Meta again called Turkanian, who phoned Koppelman. There was a forensic team on site this time with a crime scene tent and dogs in the backyard. Meta sent photos. Officials appeared to be concentrating on one area in particular, and they started to dig up said area. At some point, the claw of the bucket on the excavator pulled up the ring of a barrel, which made them stop in their tracks. Time seemed to have slowed down for all hands that were on duty at this point. The anthropologists went into the hole with their toothbrushes, small picks, and shovels, just so they didn't miss anything. And sure enough, the next scoop, the anthropologist had stopped. There's a bone that had been pulled up.
So he finally told the truth for the first time in this whole fucking time.
It was heartbreaking that they just dug up a child that had been there for 30 years. It was sad that Brenda, who was inside the home at the time of them doing so, is about to learn that what Dennis had just said was true and her daughter was buried in the backyard. Aundria's remains were found within 4 different bags inside the remnants of that barrel, and when they found her, she was found in a trash bag of used diapers, probably to mask the smell. There was a peppermint candy wrapper in the trash bag with her with the date of 1989 on it. Later that day, the police held a press conference. They announced that human skeletal remains had been found and that they likely belonged to Aundria Bowman. But they needed to confirm her identity first. They used Kathy's DNA that she'd previously submitted. The complete coordinates that came back between the samples confirmed a daughter-mother relationship between the skeletal remains and Kathleen Turkanian. Kathy knew exactly where her daughter was buried from the very beginning. The spot she pointed out on the Google Map images, the area she and Koppelman had zoned in on using the drone, where Turkanian said her daughter was this whole time, was exactly where her body was found. Call it a mother's intuition. In June 2020, Dennis received 2 life sentences plus 20 years for murdering Kathleen Doyle. He was ordered to serve his time in Michigan, where he would stand trial for Aundria's murder. The first hearing was held in February 2021. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the proceedings were live streamed and Koppelman and Turkanian watched from their computer screens. Brenda took the stand first. She tearfully recounted how she'd made missing posters because she believed Aundria had run away. She said she learned the truth only after Dennis was arrested in the Doyle case. When she was asked whether Aundria had ever accused Dennis of molesting her, Brenda said yes, but that she hadn't believed the allegations were true. That's a lie, she told Aundria, and you know it. As other witnesses took the stand, Dennis sat quietly in a green shirt, bow tie, and face mask. Testimony from experts involved with Aundria's recovery and autopsy revealed that she had been dismembered. Dennis had wrapped her body parts in plastic bags and stuffed them into a cardboard barrel before burying them. The remains were too decomposed to establish an official cause of death, but the circumstances were sufficient for the medical examiner to rule what happened a homicide. Chris Haverdink, the detective Turkanian and Koppelman met with at Goog's Pub and Grub, took the stand. Haverdink said that after being arrested in Michigan in 2019 for Kathleen Doyle's murder, Dennis eventually told authorities that he had nothing left to lose and went on to describe a version of events similar to the ones he'd given Brenda. Sorry. That Aundria's death had been an accident and that he tried to cover his tracks. He dismembered his daughter because she wouldn't fit in the cardboard barrel otherwise. To confirm the story, he pointed authorities to a machete stashed under his bed. The details were hard for Turkanian to hear, but she felt comforted knowing that Koppelman, other online detectives, and people like Meta were just a phone call or text away. They didn't believe Dennis's story. Like Turkanian, they were sure Dennis had intended to kill Aundria. He'd engaged in a clear pattern of violence against young women. In fact, just a month prior to the hearing, another crime had come to light. Man sought an assault, read a frontline page in the Holland Sentinel, published October 18, 1979. The article details a violent attack on a 27-year-old woman who early on a Sunday morning was bound, gagged, and sexually assaulted by an intruder in her home. The perpetrator took cash before fleeing the scene and was described as a white man between 25 and 30 years old with sandy hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He was estimated at 5'6" and 150 pounds. According to the young woman, her assailant was wearing a leather jacket and dark pants. The newspaper published a police sketch of the suspect, his ink-blotted pupils staring blankly from the front page. More than 40 years after the assault, Dennis Bowman confessed to the crime. There was little risk in doing so. He was already behind bars for murder, and the statute of limitations in the case had long since expired. When they read the article about the 1979 crime, Turkanian and Koppelman couldn't help but notice a striking resemblance between Bowman and the police sketch. But it was the last line of the article that really caught their attention. According to the lead detective in the case, there had been a recent uptick in reports of prowlers in the neighborhood where the crime had occurred. Police suspected the attacker might have committed other crimes. For years, Meta had insisted hers was. She was frustrated that Bowman would confess to the 1979 assault, but not to what she'd believed he'd done to her. Now, at least, the police seemed to be listening to her. In February 2021, Michigan News 8 reported that police had confirmed Bowman was their prime suspect in Meta's abduction. Rope recovered from the scene and kept on file since 1989, when the crime occurred, had come back negative for Bowman's DNA, but authorities said they were hopeful that technological advancements would allow it to be retested in the future. Turkanian and Koppelman have identified other unsolved crimes they believe Bowman, who is now 72, should be investigated for. In 1977, Deborah Polinsky, a 20-year-old Holland woman, was killed in what one newspaper called a sex slaying. After Polinsky failed to show up for work, a colleague found her stripped, sexually assaulted, and stabbed to death in her home, with her German Shepherd standing guard over her body. In 1970, Shelley Speet Mills, a 19-year-old newlywed, was stabbed to death in her apartment in Grand Rapids, 30 miles northeast of Holland. Mills' mother, who drove into the city to take her daughter to lunch, found her body. Around the time of Meta's abduction, there was a series of similar incidents. A 13-year-old girl was nearly pulled off a Holland street by a stranger. A 9-year-old girl on a bike was stopped by a man who opened his car door and asked repeatedly if she wanted to get ice cream. And several weeks after Meta was taken, two siblings aged 9 and 7 were walking near Van Raalte Elementary School when they encountered a man they later estimated to be in his 30s. The suspect, who was driving a truck and wearing blue jeans and a blue winter jacket, offered the children money, then chased them on foot when they refused to get in his vehicle. The siblings later described the truck as shiny and red. Meta had described her abductor's vehicle similarly. Red truck, white cab. A photo of a truck Bowman once drove, provided to Turkanian and Koppelman by Bowman's sister-in-law, matched that description. On February 7, 2022, Dennis Bowman was sentenced to an additional 35 to 50 years in prison.
Holy fuck.
For the murder of Aundria Bowman, and Turkanian and Meta were at the court case to witness his downfall. The judge said to the court that in her 40 years of working in the court systems, she'd never read anything as disturbing. He was ordered to complete his sentence in Virginia. Michigan authorities made the decision as a team that they wouldn't allow Dennis to have control of this situation, even though he led them to find Aundria's remains.
Hell yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I still think they should have killed him, but whatever.
I agree. After the court case finished up, authorities pulled Turkanian aside and told her that Brenda had Aundria's remains cremated, and she wanted to give her half of them if she wanted them. The friends speak often on the phone and social media. They're vocal evangelists of armchair detective work. The internet is an investigative tool, and if used consistently in a certain way, it'll get you somewhere, Turkanian said. After Peggy Johnson was identified as the Racine County Jane Doe, police announced that she would be reburied next to her mother under her real name. Turkanian wants the same thing for her daughter. She's planning to go to court to obtain the other half of Aundria's remains so that she can bury her as Alexis Badger. It's a long shot, but then the chances that Dennis Bowman would ever be arrested were slim, and that happened. No one expected that Turkanian and Koppelman's persistence would help solve numerous cold cases, but it did. Turkanian doesn't believe in closure. It's too pat a concept to apply to tragedy, too neat a way to describe what it means to find answers decades after a young woman vanishes or a body is found without a name. But nothing is impossible, And it's never too late. If Turkanian believes in anything, it's that. So that's it.
So the biological mother's like pissed off at the adopted.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not her fault, but I can understand.
She really didn't do anything, though.
That's true. She kind of chose sides with Denny.
I get it. I get both
the whole
sides.
time. Yeah.
I get both sides because she didn't protect her. Your daughter's coming and saying she's sexually assaulted, which obviously is true based on him murdering her. I'm sorry. Her saying that he would wake her up in the middle of the night to sexually assault her and make her do sexual things she didn't want to do, that's true.
Yeah, that's true.
From where I'm sitting and from what I know, that's true. And Brenda didn't do shit about it.
And that wasn't his first time going to prison, and she knew that.
Yeah.
She literally stood by him and took Aundria.
Yeah, and she didn't take the kids out of the
So
house.
is he dead?
To my knowledge, he is not dead, but I can look it up real quick.
Yes, that's all. Answer the question. Let's pray he is.
Yeah, this case was a doozy. I've been working on it for what, 4 months? 4 months?
Yeah, a long time.
Please, for the love of God, tell me that he's dead. So we can end this on a good note. Please tell me he's dead.
I say he did.
I don't know, where do you see that? It doesn't say anything about him being dead.
So he's not.
No, he
Wishful
would
thinking.
pop up.
Of course he gets to watch. He's going to be able to live to be like 150
Yeah.
or some shit.
Well, the crazy thing is he got away with it for so long.
He
He
probably
lived
doesn't have a soul. I'm
yeah.
pissed.
He had a
His soul's
whole
gone.
he had a whole life. You know, he wasn't in prison for as long. It sucks.
Yes, you're a bitch.
Yeah, I feel like he's still alive.
Yeah, he is.
Maybe he's getting
Totally
butt
is.
fucked in prison.
Yeah,
Maybe
well,
he's someone's
I
bitch.
found an obituary, but I don't think this is the guy.
It's probably not. It would have been all over.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it doesn't look like him.
Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Sorry for the delay on everything. So, hopefully you enjoyed our TikTok live if you joined in.
Yeah. Hopefully we talk to you in a few weeks.
Yeah, hopefully it's not as much of a wait. Life be crazy. Life be like that.
Life be like that.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, well, thank you for listening, and thank you for all that popped in and gave us love and support. We will talk to you next time.
I love you
See
a latte.
you on the flip side later.
Bye.
Peace.
Bye.